Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us again for the Mike Pittman Podcast. Joining me on the show is Dr. John McDougall. Dr. McDougall is a world-renowned expert as it relates to nutrition. He's a board-certified internist and author of 13 national best-selling books. He trains physicians at 4 or 5 different hospitals. He's been published in journals. He's been in probably every documentary as it relates to plant-based eating that's probably ever been produced. I've been following him for quite some time now, and I am elated that he joined us on the show here today, even with all the technical difficulties that we've had. Dr. McDougall, thank you for joining the show. Welcome. Sure. I'm going to go ahead and get started, Doctor. There's so many different areas I wanted to touch on as it relates to eating. And how did you come to the realization? Because most doctors, they prescribe medications, they want to do this and do that. How did you come to the realization that food, Socrates say food could be our medicine? What prompted you to think along those lines?
Can you recognize the state that's on the back wall?
I see some spots back there, but
The state of Hawaii.
Oh, that's the state of Hawaii?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Can you recognize it? Well, that's where my life. I went to medical school in Michigan. I had a fairly traditional education, but fortunately a very liberal one. And I met my wife at the end of medical school, and we decided to go someplace really nice in the world to train. So, I picked many spots with good weather and an ocean. We decided to take the big leap. We went to Hawaii back in 1972. And there I served part of my training. I was a surgical intern. But, Mike, we fell in love with Hawaii. I'm sure you can imagine. We didn't want to leave. And so what I did is I took a job on the big island of Hawaii. You can recognize the big island up there on the back wall, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Okay. So I went from Oahu to the big island. And there I served for a little over 3 years as a sugar plantation doctor. And that's where my whole life changed. For a couple of reasons it changed. One is my patience, Mike. I was taking care of 5,000 people. I caught 100 babies. I did brain surgery in the middle of the night. I used to see 50 or 100 people a day. I was just pushing drugs. And, my patients never got better. I thought I was a terrible, terrible doctor. This is the time when Ben Casey, Marcus Welby, and Dr. Kildare were the famous doctors on TV. And I don't know whether you're old enough to remember those.
Yeah, I remember those guys. Yeah.
They made all kinds of miracles, and I wasn't making any miracles, Mike. My patients weren't getting better. So I had these 5,000 people I was taking care of who worked on the sugar plantation in the Big Island, and they never got better, okay? They got drugged, they got excuses, and I felt terrible about myself. I was a terrible doctor. So after 3 years, I went back into training to become a good doctor. I wanted to become a board-certified internist, so I moved back to Oahu. Let's go back to the Big Island for a minute, and I'll tell you the second phase. During my 3 years as a sugar plantation doctor, I took care of first, second, third, fourth, and sometimes fifth generation Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, and Koreans. First generation, they lived in their native land, say the Philippines. And then they moved to the Big Island to start a new life, and they had children. That was the second generation. And then there was the third and the fourth, etc. Well, what I saw in my practice, Mike, was I saw my first generation who were initially raised in the Philippines, Japan, China, etc., were never overweight, never had heart disease, never had breast cancer, prostate cancer, diabetes. They never had any of the problems I was trained on, chronic problems I was trained on as a medical doctor. They never did it. And the reason is Mike, do you recall what the diet is of people in China?
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell people Chinese, Mike.
Yeah, rice, vegetables,
All right, that's it. Okay, so my first generation stuck with their parents' diet of rice and vegetables, and they moved to the Big Island. But the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, they learned the American way, and so they started adding more meat, junk, and dairy to their diet. And what I saw right in front of my eyes, seeing 5,000 people, is my first generation was trim and healthy, living on rice and vegetables. And when my second generation added more meat and dairy, they became fatter and sicker. And as time went on, as I saw their offspring, they got to the point where the people living in Hawaii are some of the fattest, sickest, most cancer-ridden people that I've ever taken care of. And that, of course, is those based on the Western diet. So that's the way I learned it. I went back into training. I became a board-certified internist, and I finished my training in about 1978, and started studying, started taking care of people as if diet was important. And Mike, in medical school, they never mentioned diet. I was totally absent from my training. But, I saw it was important because of what I learned from my sugar plantation patients. Plus, remember, they never got better with the tools that I was given, by the standard medical business. They just didn't get better. They got drugged. They got a bunch of excuses. So back in about 1985, I had transitioned my practice from one of traditional medicine to where I was only seeing people who wanted to change their diet. And what I changed their diet to was a diet similar to what they ate in Japan, China, Korea, Philippines, Central America, South America, Africa. Yeah, Africa. And that particular land in rural Africa is one of the places I learned, if you don't mind me mentioning, okay? Let's talk about what I learned as one of my most important experiences. I've got 4 mentors. All right, I'll just leave you at 1985. I started a fully diet therapy practice. But in the meantime, I had been learning about other doctors. You see, what I do is not original, Mike. Okay, there are many people for thousands of years who've done similar. But in my lifetime, I had 4 mentors. Okay, and one of my mentors, my first one, was a guy named Dennis Burkitt. Okay, Dennis Burkitt was a surgeon trained in Edinburgh, Scotland. After his training, he and Clive and Trowell and Walker, his buddies, the 4 of them, they went to Uganda, Africa. And soon, Dennis Burkitt became the head of Ministries of Health of all of Uganda, Africa. And he was taking care of 1,000 hospitals. He was taking care of 10 million people. And this went on for 17 years. After his work in Uganda, after 17 years, 10 million people, 1,000 hospitals, he came back to the United States and started lecturing about the importance of fiber. And he came to my hospital, Mike, and he gave me a noontime lecture in 1971 that changed my life. He told me, now listen carefully, he told me during his 17 years in Uganda, taking care of rural Africans who lived on a diet of starch, on millet and potatoes, roots, other vegetables, but no dairy and almost no meat. These 10 million people, he saw no hemorrhoids, no obesity. He saw 1 case of gallbladder disease in 17 years, 10 million people. He saw 1 heart attack. He saw no breast cancer, no prostate cancer, no colon cancer. And Mike, he came back and told me that. I was a young medical student, and I felt like he was just talking to me. And I said, these diseases I'm taking care of, they don't exist in rural Africa where they eat a diet of starches, of grains and legumes and root vegetables and no meat and no dairy. I say, you're telling me there's none of the diseases I take care of as a doctor? Changed my life, Mike. Changed my life. I started studying to see what other scientists, doctors had noticed it. And I found lots of them. I have 4 mentors. You can go to my website and read about my other 3 mentors. They're just as important as Dennis Burkitt, who went to Uganda, Africa. Now, Dennis Burkitt didn't know that if you stop the cause of disease, which is the American diet, the dairy, the meat, the junk, the chicken, the fish, all these things that are causing massive epidemics, pandemics now of illness. He didn't know, Dennis Burkitt didn't know, that once you stop throwing gasoline on the fire, that it goes out. In other words, if you stop eating these foods, that people got better. So that's been my practice. Mike, I've taken care of over 12,000 people. I've been at this kind of practice for over a half a century. I've run live-in programs for 48 years where people have come and lived with me, thousands of people. And we get the same results over and over again. They lose the weight, their cholesterol drops, their arthritis stops hurting, their bowels work, the indigestion goes away, they get off their drugs. Mike, we get nearly 90% of our participants to reduce or stop their medications in 7 days. That's the kind of results we get. We have a program on our website, drmcdougal.com, that's free, no gimmicks, absolutely free, that any of your listeners can go and look at and follow. They get the menus, the recipes, the instructors, everything. On my website, drmcdougal.com, free, no gimmicks. So, if you want to learn the program, no obstacle. You just have to put some work into it. We also, Mike, which is what I've been doing since 1985. Actually, in 1987, I left Hawaii. I moved to California. I started working in the second most famous heart hospital in the country, at Santa Rosa Hospital. I went into that hospital where they did numerous heart surgeries every day. And I started my practice. And I stayed there 16 years. I took care of over 3,000 people. And they basically all got better. After 16 years staying in the hospital, I set up my program at a resort. I ran that for 18 years. And then COVID hit, the pandemic of 2020. And that shut down the airlines and our hotel and resort. So I was out of business. And I started an idea I'd only dreamed about my whole career. And that is delivering my program to everybody in the world over the internet. And so we started a telemedicine program in August of 2020. And we have, had hundreds of people go through it. There are people from all over the world, Singapore, Moscow, London, all over the world. Because they take the program at home, our physician goes into their house via the internet and does an exam on them. Our support specialists meet them with them every day for 12 days and helps them with their blood sugar and their blood pressure and how they feel, and what pills they should take and what they should cook for lunch and dinner. Every day for 12 days. And this continues at a less frequent rate for a whole year in our program. We get better results than we've gotten in any of our live-in programs in the telemedicine program. We've cut the cost by 2/3. It's only 1/3 as much as it used to be. It's an amazing program, this telemedicine program. So if you don't, if you, for one reason or another, can't follow the free program, and most people can't, Mike, let's just say it's hard. It's hard to learn from a book. That's why you go to school. Then come to our school. We'll make you do it. We'll teach you to do it. We'll help you. We'll get you off the drugs, Anyway, that's what I've done. That's how I got started. And I practiced this way for, coming on half a century. That's 50 years, Mike.
Wow.
So I learned a lot.
That's amazing when you talked about the doctor from Uganda, over 10 million people. I mean, that just sounds almost unbelievable, but it's believable.
And
and
you know
my,
what, Mike? And you know what, Mike? They were all black.
wow. And
And they were all trim, and they were all strong, and they were all tall, and in their own right, they were all beautiful. They just didn't have heart disease and obesity and cancer that we have. They were hearty, healthy, strong people. Now, I have to say the people in Africa are changing. In rural Africa, they used to have a diet, as I say, of all starch, rice, corn, potatoes, what rice is. Maybe they had some rice. They had some grains, corn, potatoes, roots, vegetables, no dairy. For one thing, people of certain races, like Asians and Africans, they can't digest dairy products. You know about lactose intolerance.
Mm-hmm.
You know about you can't drink milk, right?
Right.
You don't have the enzymes. Korea, when you drink dairy, you drink milk. Anyway, it was that's how I learned. Dennis Burkett, rural Africans is where I learned this diet from. And then I transferred it to one of treatment. And, once you take the stuff that makes people sick away, Mike, guess what happens?
They get better.
They get well. Because the body Mike, doesn't want to be sick. It doesn't want to be fat. It doesn't want to be diabetic. It wants to be healthy. And once you give it a chance, and that means oatmeal for breakfast, hash brown potatoes cooked without grease. That means pancakes and waffles. That means mushu vegetables over rice. That means bean burritos. That means pasta and marinara sauce. That means we've got my wife, Mary, my partner, all this week. She published 4,000 recipes. We've got 11 books that have recipes in it. On Instagram, there are probably another 50,000 McDougall recipes. So don't tell me you can't do this. You just have to know. Mike, I've over my career, people have asked me, who will do this? Thinking that only well-educated people, really wealthy people, really smart people, so to speak, will be the ones that will do it, and the less advantaged people won't. That's not what I found, Mike. What I found is it takes about a 7-year-old, as far as education is concerned, to understand it. You don't have to have much schooling or education. It's a very simple concept. And the other criteria you have to have, Mike? You have to care about yourself. You have to care about yourself. And you know what? People who are less advantaged care about themselves and their families just as much as everybody else does. And so once they hear this message, they go for it. Mike, we took care of a church in Oakland, a black church in Oakland. One time we took care of the Sacramento food bank. Again, less privileged people, not all blacks, but less privileged. They did as well as the rich people who come to my program. This has nothing to do with, all you got to do is like yourself and figure out what the heck to do. That's all. And then you'll do it.
When you talked about the number of patients that you've helped over the years, I know you have probably tons of stories, but what have been some of the ones that have stood out to you the most that you would consider to be, I guess, what most people would consider to be miraculous, but in your field is just business as usual, as you call it?
Well, you want to start with a good bowel movement? Some people think just having a good DM in the morning is a big deal because they don't. So you want to start there? That's a pretty miracle thing. I think that's pretty important. I know you expected me to tell you about somebody who had cancer growing out of both ears that got cured. I can't tell you that, okay? But I can tell you that my patients, they're basically all miracles. We have people with severe heart disease that get better. I believe we have people with cancer who live longer and die of something else before this cancer. I know that we can cure type 2 diabetes nearly 100% of the time. Let me say that again, because your audience, likely a lot of them have type 2 diabetes. Not for any particular reasons. half the people in the United States are pre-diabetic. Our cure rate, Mike, for type 2 diabetes is nearly 100%. In 7 days, you see most of it. It sometimes takes until they lose all the weight, which could be a year or two to cure it, but it's 100% curable.
Mm.
But other doctors know this too. They just don't know it's curable with food. They know it's curable when you do intestinal surgery called bariatric surgery. Where they do these operations to make people thin. They cure 80% of the people with that surgery. If they can cure 80% of the people with that surgery, keeping them on the American diet, I can do better just this diet. Nearly 100%. I'm talking to your audience. If you're tired of shooting yourself up with these pills, or better yet, you're tired of people advertising the semaglutide, like Wegovy or Ozempic, the shots that I can't afford, that cost like $1,400 a month. The ones that all the celebrities are taking now, Mike, those shots, okay? The diet works far better than taking those kind of medications. So you're gonna do better than all your celebrity and rich friends just by eating potatoes than they're doing by shooting themselves up with these stupid drugs. In other words, I told you, we get nearly 90% of people off all their medication or to reduce their medication. Obesity is easy. Just recall what I told you a minute ago about Dennis Burkett. There were no overweight people in Uganda back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. No one was overweight. 10 million people. No one was overweight. Look back at the records. Look at the pictures. You know what I'm talking about. Don't you, Mike?
Yeah.
When you see pictures of your ancestors, which may go back hundreds of years, I don't know, aren't they all trim, active, hardy, dancing, having fun, strong people, no fat people, no people buried in a pile full of drugs? What's changed? What's changed in the migration to the United States? What has changed? What's changed is food. Access to meat and dairy and poultry and fish, all these rich foods, which I call them, Mike, I call these the foods for kings and queens. This is what the aristocrats, the pharaohs, the priestess used to eat for thousands of years. The rich people ate the rich food. They didn't eat the vegetables. It was the people who built the pyramids that lived on wheat and barley. The people who tended the fields that lived on corn and potatoes and beans. Okay? It was the rich people, the kings, queens, and aristocrats that fed these grains and beans to pigs and cows and sheep and birds and then ate those animals. Does that sound like what Americans do, Mike, huh? Does that sound like we do, huh?
Yeah.
Well, we look like kings and queens. We're sick like the royalty of the past. You can regain your health if you eat like a common person, a starch-based diet. Now because we're only going to be able to go on this so long. You'll wear me out. Let me tell you what starch is, Mike. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Starches are things that you were told not to eat because they make you fat. Well, that's why there are so many fat people in China, right, Mike? Living on rice. Okay. Starches are grains and legumes, like rice, corn, wheat, wild rice. Okay, underground storage organs are like potatoes and sweet potatoes and other roots and bulbs. Legumes are your beans, peas, and lentils. That's your food. It's all vegetable, and you must eat mostly starch. The problem some of your people are, your followers, your listeners, your program fall into, is they think this is a vegetarian, plant food-based diet, and they miss the word starch, and they try and live off kale and broccoli and cauliflower, and they starve to death. They go, I can't eat this way. I can't get in enough calories. No, you can't. Nobody can. I got a grumbling stomach. I don't feel good eating all these nutrient-dense green and yellow vegetables. the non-starchy green yellow vegetables, the kale, the broccoli, the lettuce. You
Mm-hmm.
can't live on that. But see, if you are taught you need to eat a plant food-based diet or a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet, you miss starch. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All the population, Mike, I'm going to say something really important. All large, successful populations of people throughout all of verifiable human history. I'm talking about at least 2 million years of human history, have obtained the bulk of their calories from starch. We're talking about 100 million people who've walked this earth. We're talking about 99.999% of the people who ever walked this earth obtained the bulk of their calories from starch. This rich food, this eating like kings and queens, has only been around for 50 years, maybe 100, at most 150 years, except for the royalty of the past. This is not a mystery, Mike, as to why people are sick. It's the food. You see, it's real simple. You don't have to wait for some miracle to be discovered. It's just plain and simple, right sitting in your kitchen. If you change your diet, you will get well.
Let me ask you this question, doctor, and I believe that I know the answer. I just wanted to hear your answer on it as well. Why is that the medical community doesn't want to embrace this type of lifestyle and treat patients this way?
Well, there's a few that want to go beyond the mold, like Dr. Montgomery.
Yeah.
So there are a few doctors out there. So don't say all of us. There are a few of us. But you're right. 99.99% of the doctors practice have a practice oriented around giving people drugs that are mostly useless and have terrible expense and side effects associated with them. Now, I'm going to tell you what the reason is. Okay, most physicians need to see people as quickly as they can. Talking to people takes time. Passing out pills with a prescription is instantaneous. A good share of the medical business makes their living on gimmicks, on tools they can develop, like the gastroenterologists. They've got these 8-foot colonoscopy tubes that every time they pass them up somebody's butt, they make $1,000 to $3,000. Okay, these cardiologists, they've got these long catheters. They stick those up people's arteries. They make $5,000, $10,000. You try figuring out what it is, Mike? The reason people practice the way they do? It's called money.
Yeah.
And it is the full underlying factor, except occasionally ego gets in the way. But it's mostly money. If we could change the way physicians and hospitals and drug companies, insurance companies were rewarded, then the medicine would change overnight. They don't really care. I don't care whether you pay for your Tesla based on money from patients who get well with food, or based upon heart patients that die on the table. I just want the money. Your money. If there's people you're dealing with, Mike, what do you expect us to act like? We're people. Don't people act that way?
Yeah. Let me ask you another question, doctor. How detrimental is sugar and salt to our bodies in terms of detrimental?
Not
really?
much. Yeah, you see, that's one of the reasons you can't follow a diet. Is because food on the tip of the tongue, Mike. Now, I know this is going to shock you, but you got to listen to me, okay? On the tip of your tongue are 2 taste buds. Do you remember what they were? Do you remember from high school, junior high, they showed you a tongue, and they said the tongue has taste buds. The tip of the tongue has taste buds for sugar and salt. That wasn't a mistake, Mike. Okay, the sugar and salt taste buds were put on the tip of the tongue so you would seek sugar and salt. Now, sugar once used to be starch, vegetables and fruits, and occasional honey, once in a while maple syrup, but otherwise That was sugar. You actually have taste buds for starch on the tip of your tongue. And salt, you need minerals. Otherwise, you won't be healthy. You've got to get minerals in. And, of course, sodium chloride is one of those minerals. So we're natural seekers of salt and sugar. And, Mike, that's what people like. When somebody comes to my clinic, if they don't like the food, you know what I tell them? Pick up the salt shaker. Put salt on the surface of the food when you taste it. You don't get very much salt. Let me put this in perspective, Mike, so you're not too upset with me, because you think I've abandoned the core principle of evil salt. I haven't, totally, almost. The average American takes in 10 grams of salt, sodium a day. 10 grams. You're supposed to take in 3,500 grams. Yeah, milligrams, I'm sorry. No, it's milligrams, sorry. Okay, 10,000 milligrams. You're supposed to take in 3,500 milligrams, or as low as 2,300 milligrams. Our diet has 500 milligrams of sodium. Okay, the basic diet, 500 milligrams. If you add a half a teaspoon of salt on the surface of the food, half a teaspoon of salt on the surface of the food is a lot of salt. That's 1,100 more milligrams. That means if you add the salt, sodium in the food with the half a teaspoon of salt we put on the surface, you're now up to 1,600 milligrams. If you have a massive heart attack, you end up in your hospital's intensive care unit. Their low sodium diet is 2,000 milligrams, which is 400 more than ours with a half teaspoon of salt added. So what we do, Mike, because we want people to eat the food. If they don't eat the food, they're not going to get the results. They've got to like the food. We recommend that they put on the surface small amounts of sugar and salt, not mixing it up in cookies. You lose the taste. You put it on the surface of the food. That way you're going to eat your oatmeal in the morning. That way you're going to eat your bean soup or lentil soup or pea soup. You love this food. You love it. But you've been adapted to salt so much, and it really doesn't. If we had a couple hours, Mike, I could give you an argument as to why low salt diets are dangerous. But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to tell you is we take a kind of a middle of the road approach, assuming that real high salt intakes are harmful, knowing that really, really low salt intakes can be helpful, but also can be harmful. We kind of take a little middle of the road approach. Again, the first recommendations are 2,300 milligrams, the intensive care unit, 2,000 milligrams, our diet with a half a teaspoon of salt added, 1,600 milligrams. 400 less than is you'll get in the ICU. So my message to anybody who's listening to me is, if you don't like the food, put a little salt on it. You'll love it. And it won't be to health, and you'll eat it. You've got to eat the food or you won't get the results.
When we talk about the food, should we try to eat it as raw as we can, or is it all right to cook it at particular temperatures that we should cook it at?
No. The human diet is a cooked food diet. Okay, there's a guy named Richard Wrangham, Wrangham, Richard Wrangham, PhD, from, I believe, Cornell. He did a book called Catching Fire. And it's about how he's an anthropologist, an evolutionary anthropologist. It's a study about how humans became humans, Homo sapiens, from lesser primates, with the addition of cooked food. You see, it's only by cooking the food can you get enough calories. If you're going to eat all raw food, you'd have to be like a gorilla. You know what gorillas do? I mean, picture a gorilla in your mind. What do you see them doing? Are they active, or are they sitting there eating? They're sitting there eating. They have to eat all day because they eat raw fruits and vegetables. They have no time for anything else but eating. It would be very difficult to eat a raw food diet. I've met people who've tried. Not any who have succeeded, but I've met people who've tried. A raw food diet, like, for example, if I was going to live on cabbage, I'd have to eat 22 pounds of cabbage a day. I don't have that kind of time. The human diet is a cooked food diet. You can't eat pinto beans raw. You can't eat rice raw. You'll have a hard time eating potatoes raw. Excuse me, Mike, the human diet, the starch-based diet, is a cooked food diet. Cooking releases nutrients, makes the food edible. It's the diet of human beings, not raw.
What about juicing, doctor? What about juicing? Juicing? Do you recommend juicing?
No, I don't recommend juicing. You see, juicing is what the attitude people have is if you crush up the fruit and vegetable, you'll release more nutrients, more vitamins and minerals, and etc. You don't need more nutrients. You don't have deficiency diseases. You don't suffer from scurvy, beriberi, pellagra. You don't need more nutrients. You suffer from excesses. You need to get the excesses out of your diet. And one of the excesses are isolated concentrated nutrients, which are in supplement pills. And even to a point, it happens when you grind the food. When you grind the food, what happens is you destroy its natural architecture. And as a result, you change the physical properties. So when you change a fruit or a vegetable into a juice, you now have something that nature never understood or knew. You don't make a fruit or vegetable better than nature did by hitting it 1,000 times with a steel blade. I could go into details about how it changes the physical properties, but I'll just leave you with this, Mike. You know what? You can have some juices. It ain't no big deal. I mean, it has a negative effect, but only a small one. Nothing compared to what you're doing to yourself now with, pork chops and cheese sandwiches, and, sausages. Have a little juice, but you don't make it healthier by hitting it with a steel blade 1,000 times.
Yeah. What about organic food? Should we all try to strive for organic food or just vegetables in general? Or?
No, you should. You should eat organic food. Mary and I do, but Mike, we don't teach it. And the reason we don't teach it is it puts up another barrier. If anybody ever asked us, Mary and I have to take great strides in having, as healthy a food, organic food in our home as possible. And if anybody asks, we always tell them that. But we don't teach it because we're trying to get people out of heart surgery, out of, deforming breast cancer surgery, off, a dozen pills and, 2 or 3 shots a day. I can't deal with whether or not they're going to get brain damage or cancer 30 years from now from pesticides or other organic chemicals, even though it's important. I got to deal with right now. You understand. So, I do think it's important. But one other thing, Mike, it's really important people understand is your greatest intake of these chemicals comes from eating high on the food chain. You know what the food chain is, Mike? Let me tell your listeners. You start with pesticides and other organic chemicals, inorganic and organic chemicals sprayed on the grasses and grains and seaweed and algae. All right. So now comes the cow that eats the grasses and grains, and now comes the fish who eats the seaweed and the algae. Right. Whatever is in them in terms of chemicals is sucked up into their body fat because these are fat soluble chemicals. So anyway, let's go to the fish. So the little fish eats the plant, and the little bigger fish eats the little fish, and the little bigger fish eats the medium-sized fish. And then, you get up here and you start eating the tuna and the salmon and the high predators, okay? And you are eating off the top of the food chain because every time you move up the food chain, you may concentrate these chemicals as much as 1,000 times fold. So you want to eat a healthy diet. All you have to do is just slip into the plant kingdom. Start with vegetables and fruits. That'll drop your pesticides or your chemical intake more than any worry about organics.
Interesting.
Worry about the organics too.
What is the definition of a holistic doctor? I've seen that term used before. They pretty much.
Yes. I am not a holistic doctor. I am not an alternative doctor. I'm a board-certified internal medicine specialist. Okay, licensed in 50 states, associated with 4 or 5 medical schools. I'm the real thing, Mike. I'm just a regular old doctor. I just don't push drugs on people. I just don't push dangerous procedures on people. What I tell people, Mike, when they listen to me, and by the way, we're on every Sunday night, 5 p.m. Pacific time. You go to our YouTube channel, that means McDougall channel, and every Sunday night, 5 o'clock, Mary and I and our daughter Heather, we're there for an hour. We answer questions. We bring you up to date on the newest research that's done. Every Sunday night, 5 o'clock Pacific time, Sunday. McDougall YouTube channel. Okay? So, I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, this is what I tell people, Mike. Your listeners, and I'm talking to you folks, all right? I'm talking to your audience. When I'm talking to people, when I do shows every place, we do the Sunday night show, or when we do the class, we have 50, 60, 70 people attend our programs every month or two, our 12-day living program. What I tell them is this, Mike. This is all I ask, is try us first. Give us 4 days, because the benefits start in 4 days. Give us 7 days, because by 7 days, you'll be absolutely convinced that you are on the road to recovery. 7 days. Or give us 12 days, like we asked you for in our telemedicine program, which we do over the internet in your home with medical care, take you off the drugs, teach you, make sure you do it. Give us 12 days. You can do it at home, free. It's on my website, the free McDougall thing. All right, and then what I tell them finally as an out, if you aren't better in 4 months, go find somebody else to listen to. Because within 4 months, if I got it right, you're going to be well. Except for the weight loss. It may take more than 4 months because the average weight loss is about 10 pounds a month. Some of your listeners might have got 2 years of weight to lose before they can claim disease. Don't declare yourself incurably ill until you've done the program. You're not incurably ill. Our results are published, and I have 3 uncontested scientific papers that talk about our results. They've been out for over 10 years. If anybody thought we were exaggerating or lying or didn't have a proper message, they would have said something. They're in the medical journal. Look up my name. Look up McDougall and diet. You'll find them. They're easy. Look up Google. Anyway, that's easy. Right? It's so simple. And that's part of the problem. People want something real fancy. The latest drug, the latest device. After all, we can destroy the world with atomic bombs. We ought to be able to figure out something to cure my diabetes, don't you think? No, they never will. They never will, Mike. I know. I've been in this medicine for over half a century. I can tell you they never will. Because the problem is the food. It's like taking a cigarette smoker. Let's just take a smoker for a minute. You tell a cigarette smoker there's a way to deal with their problems to take smokers' antioxidant vitamins. Well, they say, okay, maybe I reduced my risk of lung cancer, but I'm still coughing. Well, take cough syrup. Oh, well, now the cough has a bunch of green sputum in it. Well, take antibiotics. Mike, how do you make a smoker well?
Stop smoking.
You got it. The same thing with food. Same thing with the food. You can give them drugs all day long. You can cut parts of their body in and out all day long. You're not going to fix the problem until you fix the problem. The problem's the food, but it costs nothing. There's no money in it. Just from listening to our time together, Mike, your people can walk away and do this and never listen to you or I again. It's so stupid simple. I will tell you the McDougall diet in 2 sentences. The McDougall diet is a diet of starches, vegetables, and fruits. Second sentence, the McDougall diet does not contain animals or their parts or their secretions. That does not contain animals or free oils. You don't consume olive oil. You don't eat flaxseed oil. You don't eat omegas. These are dangerous substances to eat, these oils. Now, the oils are naturally in your food. You eat them in the food, but you don't eat them free in a bottle or a can. Dangerous. Cancer, heart disease, obesity, all kinds of problems. And of course, that's why there are fat vegans, Mike. Have you noticed this? You deal in the vegan world, but have you noticed that there are some grossly overweight vegans out there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I have noticed.
Oh, you have noticed it. I would say half of them are overweight. Obese, overweight. You know, I wrote an article, it's in my book, The Start Solution, which I encourage everybody to get. This is the book I wrote like 13 years ago, but it's still an active bestseller. It's called The Start Solution. What was I about to say?
Are you talking?
What?
You're talking about the book. You're talking about the book that you wrote.
Yeah, I know. I'm going someplace else.
Vegans being overweight.
Oh yeah, the fat vegan. I was telling you about the fat vegan. Thank you, Mary. Listen, Mary and I have been together for 52 years. All right, I was going to tell you about the fat. Thanks, Mary. In a newsletter I wrote, and in the book I wrote, The Start Solution, is a chapter called The Fat Vegan. No one has ever come back to me and said, you were so offensive by putting this oxymoron in, apparent oxymoron. But it's obviously not, because there are loads of fat vegans. Fat vegans, to me, are one of my primary audiences. And I think the reason that nobody's ever objected, I said, listen, you folks have already declared your strength, your interest, your understanding of the importance of not eating animal foods. You've already understood this. And you want to go out and you want to help the animals. You want to stop animal cruelty. Or you're into the environment. You want to help planet warming. Those are extremely important causes, Mike. But what happens is you look horrible. You're obese, you're greasy, you're full of acne. You don't look well. You know, I'd like to save the planet. I'd like to help the animals, but at a price of looking like you and being sick like you, this makes no sense. So I've told these fat vegans, listen to me and look the part. And then you'll get your message of animal cruelty and saving the planet across to people, but not the way you look now.
Doctor.
Nobody told me that they offended them, but you're a fat vegan. Fix it.
Doctor, I'm about ready to wrap it up, but I want you to give us your thoughts, parting shots, if you want to call it that, in terms of what would you like to say to our listeners?
Look, you are healthy. You just not expressing it. I mean, you are personally attractive. You're just not expressing it. And the reason you're not is you're following the wrong set of rules. It's almost a guarantee that if you switch to a diet of starches, how much starch? 70, 90% of your food, with fruits and vegetables, no animal foods, and no free oils, that you will lose the weight and you will get well and you will look younger, and you'll function younger, and you'll be more active, and all the things you dreamed about, which you hope to get from pills and devices, you will get, and the benefits will start in 4 days. You're worth it. So is your family. So is your community. Thanks, Mike, for getting the truth out. We'll change the world, okay?
All right, Doctor, thank you so much for agreeing to come on, and with all the technical difficulties we had, I'm glad we were able to get it worked out, and I will be in touch. I meet every month with Dr. Montgomery. I've been following him, and I think what he does is amazing. He has his own cafeteria where he has the foods there for you, so he's doing a great job as well. So,
good man.
Yeah.
Share this interview with him, Mike. Mike, share this interview with him, because you really inspired me to give a talk more enthusiastic than I usually give. So thank you. You're a great host.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Bye-bye.